Steven Spielberg presents Gremlins. They're clever. They're mischievous. They'll get into the kitchen, the basement, the garage. They'll get into anything. And once they get in,
That's a real gremlin, my kid!
you're in for it. Gremlins. They'll be expecting you. Directed by Joe Dante. Rated PG.
Gremlins is a comedy horror film released in 1984. Let me just get this out of the way. Gremlins is my all-time favorite movie, and in this review I'll be taking a look at some of the LJN figures that were released in 1984 for the film. If you are new to the channel, be sure to hit that subscribe button. Up first is a 3-pack of smaller sized figures that includes Gizmo, Bendable Stripe, and Gremlin Stripe. Let's start off with the cute and cuddly Gizmo. The first thing that stands out are those big brown eyes and those large ears. Even though this figure is small, there is still a lot of detail and sculpting going on. I mean, there are even sculpted veins in the ears. And just look at the detail on that fur. I'm really impressed with how this turned out, especially being released in 1984. Next up is Bendable Stripe, and he carries over the same level of detail as Gizmo. Unlike the happy smiling Gizmo, Stripe has a little sinister grin on his face, and his arms are placed on his sides. He just looks as if he is about to get into some mischief. Looking at the feet, there are even little toenails sculpted. Stripe wouldn't be Stripe without his signature mohawk. I honestly can't get over how good the fur looks on these little figures. And finally, the last figure from the 3-pack is Stripe in gremlin form. And there are surprisingly a lot of paint apps on this figure. For example, look at the face, with all the yellow dots above the eyes. And the eyes themselves are red and yellow with black pupils. The paint continues onto the body with his arms, legs, and chest painted. While the Mogwais had amazing fur detail, this gremlin figure has great reptilian scale-like detail sculpted. I really like the pose he is in as well, with his legs bent in a somewhat crouched position. It really captures the Gremlins feel from the movie. And of course, the white mohawk is also present. Even the back of the figure looks good in my opinion. Next up is the Bendable Stripe Gremlin, and a figure I played with a lot as a child. The awesome sculpting from the smaller Stripe Gremlin carries over into this bendable figure. Size-wise, this Stripe is double the size of the smaller one. The added yellow paint on the figure is pretty much on par with the smaller figure. Honestly, I can't get over the detail on the skin. There are sculpted details throughout the entire figure, but the skin has a bumpy reptilian look and feel to it. Of course, his signature mohawk is present yet again. You obviously can't have Stripe without it. Another thing that has impressed me with these LJN figures is the added paint on the backside of them. It was very common with figures from the 80s and 90s to skimp out on paint when it comes to the backsides of the figures. For these to have paint is a very nice touch. And of course, the great sculpting continues on the backside as well. As far as the articulation goes, remember this is a bendable figure, so that is going to be the extent of said articulation. While technically the entire figure is bendable, only the arms and legs are able to be bent and stay in that position. With that said though, you can get them to go forwards, backwards, and even outwards. Moving on to the large size figures, first up we have the cute and cuddly Gizmo. Now the thing that sticks out as soon as you see this figure are those big beautiful eyes. The eyes have a clear plastic over them to make them more lifelike. Just as with the smaller figures, this large Gizmo has a lot of sculpted detail. I mean, just look at the fur. For them to sculpt this figure with that much detail makes this figure impressive even for today's standards. They definitely went above and beyond in my opinion. The fingernails and toenails are even sculpted. These are figures from 1984 that were aimed at kids. They did not have to get this detailed, but yet they did. Moving on to the backside, the amazing sculpted fur detail continues. The ears even have sculpted veins. This is a great figure with great detail. Looking at the articulation, the head is able to move left and right. The arms are able to move forwards and backwards. There is no articulation in the lower half. Last but not least, we finally get to the holy grail from the LJN Gremlin toy line, and that being the large striped gremlin. Let me get this out of the way. This figure is amazing. Just look at the detail on the face alone. The eyes look so realistic. All the sculpted scales and bumps just add to the realism. As with the previous stripes I looked at, this one also has added yellow paint, but it looks so much better on this figure. And of course, there's that open smiling mouth, showcasing his sharp teeth. The paint is nicely clean, especially on the mouth. The great sculpting and paint carry over into the ears, and moving down to the body as well. The chest and stomach have that added yellow paint, as well as the arms having the yellow patterns going down them. The hands are nicely sculpted and even have claws sculpted. The same goes for the feet. And while the sculpting of the legs looks just as great as the rest of the body, the biggest difference between this stripe and the previous two is that there is no added paint on the legs. Turning the figure around, now let's take a look at the backside. While the amazing sculpting yet again continues on the backside, like the front of the legs, the back is void of any yellow paint detail that was found on the previous two striped gremlins. Like I said before, it was common for figures made in the 80s and 90s to skimp out on the paint detail on the backside, but nevertheless, it is still disappointing. Another downfall of this figure are the large visible screw holes. Looking at the backs of the ears, I still cannot get over the level of sculpted detail with all the little bumps. And finally we have come to Stripe's signature mohawk. Unlike the previous two Stripe figures, this mohawk is not sculpted, and actually consists of rooted hair. Some people may or may not like this, but personally I do like it. It gives the figure added character and more realism. This large Stripe figure has 5 points of articulation. His head can rotate side to side. His arms can move up and down, but be careful as the arms on this figure are commonly seen broken off. The legs can also move up and down as well. So that is my review of the LJN line of Gremlin figures. Sadly, while I didn't have the large Stripe and Gizmo as a kid, I did have the 3-pack and Bendable Stripe, and I loved them, and I still do to this day. Every figure in this line has amazing sculpted detail. The level of detail still blows my mind, seeing these came out in 1984. Any Gremlins fan should own these in your collection. I highly recommend all of them. Once again, if you're new to the channel, be sure to hit that subscribe button, as well as click on the notification bell so you don't miss out on any future videos. Hit that like button if you did enjoy this video, and follow me on social media. Links are in the description below. Thanks for watching.
Bye, Billy.